The night I passed because of him, and woke up as his enemy's bride. The cold stone beneath my knees bit through the thin fabric of my prison dress. Chains clinked softly at my wrists, mocking my silence. The torches on the walls sputtered against the damp air, casting flickers of gold over the face I once loved. Prince Kaien stood before me, adorned in black and crimson. His ceremonial blade gleamed at his side. His eyes, those storm-gray eyes I'd memorized since childhood, held no warmth now. Only the practiced steel of a man who had already decided to bury me. "You are accused of treason against the crown," his advisor droned, voice echoing through the chamber. "You passed classified maps to the enemy. You conspired to sabotage the northern campaign." Lies, all of it. And he knew it. I didn't speak. What was the point? Kaien wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked above me, beyond me, like I was already dead. How ironic. I gave up my family, my title, my future to be his shadow. I was his blade in the dark, his silence in the court, his protector, his weapon. And when the court turned their eyes on him, he threw me in front of them like a shield. He stepped forward, unsheathing his blade. "By royal decree," he said, tone flat, "your life ends here, Elira." A tremor passed through me, not from fear, from heartbreak. "You could have just let them exile me," I whispered. "But no, you wanted it clean, you wanted it royal." Kaien finally looked at me, and for a single heartbeat, he hesitated. Then he whispered, so only I could hear, "It's for the crown. Forgive me." The blade slid through my ribs. It didn't hurt the way I expected. It burned, then numbed. Then everything slowed like the air had turned to molasses. I slumped forward. His arms caught me. Of course they did. He always knew how to make betrayal look like devotion. My blood stained the hem of his robe. My last thought before the dark came, he will mourn me for exactly as long as it's convenient. And then, I woke up. Light, gold. The scent of roses and myrrh. A breeze against my bare shoulders. My eyes flew open. I wasn't in chains. I wasn't bleeding. I wasn't even in my body. I lay on a silken bed, surrounded by satin drapes and gilded mirrors. Sunlight poured through stained glass windows. My hands, pale, soft, unfamiliar, clutched the edge of a white and gold wedding gown. A voice murmured beside me, soft and warm. "The ceremony begins in an hour, my lady." I turned. A girl no older than 20 beamed at me, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "You look divine, Lady Seraphina. His grace will be speechless." Lady Seraphina? What in the holy void was happening? I stumbled to my feet, rushed to the nearest mirror, and froze. It wasn't my face. Gone were my high cheekbones and sun-darkened skin. In their place, porcelain complexion, deep violet eyes rimmed with kohl, hair like spun silver cascading in waves down my back. This wasn't me, but I was inside it. My stomach churned. I clutched the edge of the vanity as memories, not mine, flashed through me. A girl laughing in a rose garden. A voice saying, "Luxen will love you as you are." A hand placing a ring on her finger. Luxen, Duke Luxen, enemy of Prince Kaien, ruthless tactician, merciless on the battlefield, and, apparently, my soon-to-be husband. I pressed a hand to my chest. No wound, no scar, but deep beneath my skin, I still felt the blade. I stared at the reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was regal, beautiful in a way that felt otherworldly. Ethereal skin, high delicate brows, lips painted the faintest rose. Her silver-white hair shimmered like frost in the sunlight, curled perfectly over a slender shoulder. Violet eyes, too wide and too innocent for what was thrashing inside them. I touched the glass. She copied me, but she wasn't me. "Elira," I whispered, just to hear the name aloud. "Elira." The voice that replied was wrong. Softer, sweeter, higher, not mine. A knock at the door made me flinch. The girl from earlier peeked in. "My lady? It's nearly time." I backed away from the mirror like it might bite me. "Who are you?" I asked, breath short. She blinked, confused. "It's me. Ida. Ida," I echoed. The name stirred something, hers, not mine. Seraphina's memories pulsed just below the surface, like dreams I hadn't dreamed but still remembered. Ida stepped forward cautiously. "Do you feel unwell, Lady Seraphina?" Lady Seraphina. That name again. It twisted in my mouth like something rotten. "I'm fine," I lied, smoothing the front of the gown. My hands still trembled. "Just nerves." She smiled sympathetically. "That's normal. I was shaking like a leaf when I got married." "You're married?" Ida giggled. "Only a year now. My husband's a baker. Makes these honey-dusted rolls that could make the gods weep." I nodded, as if I understood. But I didn't. Not this world, not this body, not this life. Memories leaked in, uninvited. A garden, music, the scent of jasmine in the air. A deep voice, his voice, saying, "You'll be safe with me." Then fingers brushing her cheek. A kiss. Duke Luxen. The name thundered in my skull. He was Kainen's opposite in every way. Where Kaien was fire and charm, Luxen was calculation and ice. Ruthless in war. Feared in every council chamber. A man who rarely smiled and never forgave. And now, apparently, my groom. How in all the realms had I ended up in the body of his bride? I barely had time to breathe before the doors to the reception hall opened. "My lady," Ida whispered. "He's waiting." I stepped out. The room was vast, all marble floors and stained glass. A dozen nobles stood in tight clusters, murmuring behind fans and wine glasses. But the moment I entered, the noise faltered. He was at the far end of the room, Duke Luxen. He stood like a statue carved from dusk and shadow, broad-shouldered, draped in black with silver trim, no hint of gold or indulgence. His eyes, cold steel blue, locked onto mine the instant I stepped into view. I stopped breathing. There was no warmth in his gaze. But something flickered there. Calculation, dissection, recognition perhaps, not of who I was, but of who I was not. He approached. Every step was deliberate, echoing across the hall like a countdown. "My lady," he said, and bowed. I barely managed a curtsy. "Your Grace." He straightened, studying me with unnerving intensity. "You're quiet today." "Wedding nerves," I said, echoing Ida's excuse. He tilted his head slightly. "Is that all?" A chill crept down my spine. I didn't know what Seraphina would have said, what she would have done. Every breath felt like an act. "You seem changed," he added, voice low. "Is that a problem?" A flicker of surprise in his eyes. Then the barest hint of a smirk. "Not yet." He extended his hand. "Shall we greet the court, then?" I took it. His skin was warm, firm, strong. But all I could think about was Kaien's blade, the way it had pierced me, then how this man, Luxen, now held the hand of the woman wearing the soul that should have died. My soul. As we turned toward the room together, I whispered silently in my mind, "I don't know who Seraphina really was, but I know who I am, and I swear I'll find out why I'm here, and what I'm meant to do." The room was far too quiet. Luxen's chambers, now our chambers, were colder than I expected. Not from the stone walls or the late-night breeze curling through the open balcony doors, but from him. He stood by the hearth, half in shadow, unbuttoning the stiff ceremonial jacket of his uniform. He moved without urgency, without care, like a man who had done this exact thing 1,000 times. Even marriage, it seemed, didn't rattle him. I hovered near the bed, still wrapped in the wedding gown I hadn't dared to remove. My back was straight, my breathing careful. If he came closer, I wasn't sure what I'd do. But he didn't. He didn't even look at me. Not at first. "I had the servants bring you tea," he said, nodding toward the small silver tray on the table. "Chamomile. For sleep." I blinked. That was oddly kind. "Thank you," I said, but didn't move toward it. He finally turned then, shirt half open, sleeves rolled to his forearms. His eyes found mine in an instant. "You've barely said 2 full sentences to me today." I folded my arms. We were busy being paraded around. He studied me for a beat too long. "That's not it." I didn't answer. Silence was safer. He took a step forward. My muscles tensed before I could stop them. He noticed. Of course he did. "I'm not going to touch you, Seraphina." I flinched. That name again. It didn't belong to me, but it sat on my skin like a brand I couldn't peel off. "You've changed," he said, voice calm, unreadable. "Since the ceremony." I met his gaze, firm. "Everyone changes after walking through hell." His eyes narrowed, not with anger. Curiosity, like I was a puzzle, an unexpected shift in a well-rehearsed script. "And what hell have you seen," he asked, "that I haven't? The kind where the man you'd die for puts the blade in your chest." But I just smiled. "You'd be surprised." Another long pause. Then, without another word, Luxen turned away and walked to his desk by the fire. Scrolls, maps, wax-sealed letters. He didn't even look back as he spoke. "You can sleep in the bed. I'll take the balcony sofa. Don't worry, I don't bite, unless ordered to." I stared at him, stunned by the mixture of sarcasm and indifference. Was this the cold, merciless Duke Seraphina loved? Because something didn't fit. I sat on the edge of the bed long after he vanished into the shadows of the balcony. My fingers traced the embroidery on the coverlet, but my thoughts spun elsewhere. Seraphina had loved him. I could feel it. Those emotions pressed into the walls of this body like perfume that wouldn't wash off. But why? Why him? He was intelligent, yes, sharp, and there was something restrained in the way he moved, like a wolf in control of his own hunger. But there was no warmth, no softness, nothing like Kaien's effortless charm. Still, she'd loved him, fiercely. That much was clear. I rose from the bed and tiptoed toward the writing desk while he stayed outside. A few folders lay open. Military reports, border skirmishes, trade route revisions. Everything was meticulous, color-coded, annotated in bold, slanted handwriting. He was more than a soldier. He was a strategist. And something told me he didn't marry for romance, not even for politics. He didn't trust easily. So why Seraphina? I glanced at the mirror across the room, only the echo of steel. From the balcony, his voice floated back in. Casual, low, try to get some rest. We'll need to dine with the High Court tomorrow. I didn't respond. And neither did the ghost in this body I now wore. The dream came like a wave crashing over me, suffocating and warm. Kaien's face hovered above mine, eyes filled with sorrow and fury. His blade gleamed. My blood pooled. His hand trembled as it pressed against my heart. "You were never supposed to be more than a shadow," he whispered. I gasped awake. The moonlight painted silver across the ceiling. My nightgown clung to my damp skin, soaked in sweat. My chest heaved. I sat up and froze. Something was glowing. Faint golden light pulsed from beneath the thin silk of my gown. I yanked the fabric aside, heart thudding. Across my ribs, curling up my right shoulder, were symbols, glowing letters in a language I didn't recognize. Elegant, ancient, and somehow alive, they shimmered softly like ink made from fireflies. "What the?" The door creaked open. "Milady?" Ida's sleepy voice called from the hallway. I thought I heard. She stepped in, saw me, and dropped the tray she was carrying. Porcelain shattered. Tea splashed over the marble. Ida fell to her knees, face white as ash. The soul mark. I covered myself instinctively. "It's nothing, just a rash or something." But she was already whispering prayers, trembling. "What's a soul mark?" I asked. Ida didn't answer. She scrambled to her feet and backed toward the door like I'd grown horns. "Elira," I said. My voice cracked. "My name is Elira." She fled. Seconds later, I heard heavier footsteps approaching. Luxen. He entered without knocking, as always. Bare-chested, loose trousers, hair tousled with sleep. But his eyes sharpened the moment he saw me sitting upright and the glow on my skin. He didn't blink. "Let me see. No." He crossed the room in 3 strides. "Now." I backed away. "You don't order me around. That's rich coming from someone who doesn't know who she is." That stopped me. His voice softened. "I saw it. Just for a second. The markings. I've read about them. What are they?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stepped closer, kneeling before me like a soldier before a god. He took my wrist gently, almost reverently. "I won't hurt you," he murmured. "Let me see, Seraphina." My breath hitched at that name again. But something in his voice, wasn't cold. It wasn't soft either. It was curious. Careful. I hesitated, then pulled the neckline of my gown aside just enough to show him the edge of the mark crawling up my collarbone. His eyes darkened. "This is not a blessing," he said. "It's the soul mark, a curse or a warning. Of what?" He let go of my wrist. "Of a soul that doesn't belong." I swallowed. Hard. "You've changed, Seraphina, since our wedding. Your tone, your posture, your eyes. I thought it was nerves or fear or resentment, but now—" He stood slowly. "This confirms it. You're not who they think you are." I didn't say anything. The truth trembled at the edge of my mouth, but I couldn't let it fall out. Not yet. Not to him. Not until I knew where he stood. "I won't ask again," he said, voice quieter now. "Who are you?" The marks flared, then dimmed. I straightened. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." He studied me for a long moment. Then, with something that almost resembled disappointment, he turned away. "Then I won't force you. Curse or blessing," he said over his shoulder, "you're still mine." He left without another word, and in the silence I watched the marks fade completely from my skin, as if they had never been there at all. The last person I ever wanted to see again walked through the grand palace gates like he owned them. Prince Kaien. His banner, crimson and silver, fluttered behind him as his guards flanked the entrance. Courtiers bowed low. Servants scurried like frightened birds. The moment he stepped into the marble foyer, the entire hall shifted. He still had that presence, magnetic, commanding, toxic. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stood at the top of the staircase beside Luxen, who, as always, looked like carved stone. Silent, unreadable. "Your old friend arrives," he murmured without turning his head. I swallowed. "We were never friends." Luxen didn't respond, but I could feel him watching me from the corner of his eye. Kaien approached with a diplomat's smile, but his eyes scanned the room like a predator. When they landed on me, he paused. Not visibly, but I saw it. A half-second freeze, the tiniest crease in his brow. "My lady," he said, ascending the final step with polished ease. "You must be Duchess Seraphina." I dipped a shallow curtsy, praying my voice wouldn't betray me. "Your Highness, welcome to Blackthorn." His gaze lingered on my face. "You look familiar." Luxen stepped forward before I could answer. "Seraphina rarely leaves our province. Perhaps you've seen a portrait." Kaien didn't look away. "Perhaps." The silence that followed felt like a blade pressed to my throat. "I had a shadow once," he said casually. "A night with your eyes. She died, tragically, but not before she betrayed me." I didn't blink. "Sounds like someone you should have chosen better." His mouth twitched into something between a smirk and a snarl. Luxen's jaw flexed. "You came to discuss trade, not ghosts." Kaien finally turned toward him. "Of course, business first. But forgive me if I find your Duchess interesting." "Interesting?" The word seethed in my chest like oil in flame. I forced a smile. "If you're haunted by every pair of eyes that resemble your regrets, perhaps you're not as cured of them as you pretend." Kaien blinked. Luxen, to my shock, let out the faintest breath of amusement. "Shall we?" he said coolly, motioning toward the throne room. As the men turned away, I stood frozen for a beat longer, still feeling Kaien's stare prickle along my spine. It was only when I followed that I realized my hands were shaking. The banquet that evening was suffocating, every time. Luxen noticed. I knew he did. After the third time, he leaned toward me and murmured under the hum of conversation. "He looks at you as if trying to peel off your skin." I didn't answer. "What's between you two?" he asked, still calm. "History," I said, fingers tightening on the silverware. Ugly, buried and still twitching. Luxen didn't press, but he didn't look away either. Later, I escaped to one of the side corridors under the excuse of fresh air. The corridor was empty, moonlight slicing through the tall windows like white blades across the marble floor. I leaned against a pillar and exhaled, and, of course, he found me there. "Kaien, did you think I wouldn't recognize you?" he asked, his voice low, close. I straightened. I don't know what you mean. You can lie to him, he said, stepping forward, but not to me. I held my ground. You think every woman with sharp eyes is your ghost? Get over yourself. His mouth curled. You really think the gods would let you die so easily? My heart stopped, but my lips didn't tremble. You killed Elira, I said softly. Why would they send her back? He leaned in too close. Maybe so she can finish what she started. A second passed, then another, and then Luxen's voice behind us. Is this how royal diplomacy works now? Whispered threats in shadowed halls. Kaien turned slowly. We were simply reminiscing. I doubt my wife has any memories you'd be welcome in. Luxen's voice was silk over steel, controlled but pointed. Kaien gave a slow bow. Then I'll take my leave. Good night, your graces. He walked off. Only then did I realize I had been holding my breath. Luxen didn't look at me, but as he turned back toward the corridor, he said quietly, Next time he corners you, scream, or stab him. Either works. The library was too quiet. Even the dust seemed to hold its breath between the shelves, waiting for me to break. I wasn't here for a book. I just needed space, distance from Kaien's eyes, from Luxen's questions, from the weight of Seraphina's memories pressing against my skull like storm clouds ready to burst. And they were memories. Not dreams, not vague impressions. Memories. I could feel them now, her walking these same marble corridors, fingertips brushing the spines of books with titles in ancient dialects, the scent of aged parchment and candle wax, the warmth of Luxen's voice behind her. You always hide in corners when you're thinking. She had turned then, smiled, pulled his hand toward the window seat. A soft kiss, a laugh. I shook the image away like a wasp buzzing near my ear. Those weren't my memories. That wasn't my laugh. So why did my chest tighten every time I saw him now? Why did her feelings crawl under my skin like ivy, slow, clinging, inescapable? I pressed my forehead against a cold column near the window, trying to breathe through the knot in my throat. It wasn't fair. I wasn't her. I didn't want to feel anything for Luxen. He was supposed to be Kaien's enemy. He was supposed to be a tool, a pawn I could use in whatever cruel game fate had dropped me into. He wasn't supposed to be kind. He wasn't supposed to look at me like I mattered. Footsteps behind me made me flinch. I thought I'd find you here, Luxen said. I didn't turn around. Let me guess, I said flatly. Another lecture about what's appropriate for a duchess? No. His voice was calm. Only for someone who's been avoiding me. I turned slowly. I'm not avoiding you, I'm avoiding her. He raised a brow. Elira. Seraphina. I don't even know which parts are mine anymore. There was a pause. Then he stepped closer. What do you feel when you look at me? Annoyed. Entry again. Frustrated. Another step. Keep going. I met his eyes, suddenly furious. Like I'm falling into something that's not mine. Like there's a thread pulling me toward you and I didn't tie it. His expression didn't shift. And that frightens you. Of course it does. I was trembling now. I spent my whole life loyal to someone who destroyed me. And now I'm supposed to trust you, just because her heart once did? His voice dropped lower. If you're afraid of what you feel, Elira, it's because it matters. I froze. He had said my name. Not Seraphina's. The word caught in my throat. I couldn't breathe past it. The urge to confess everything, to rip off the mask and scream that I wasn't his wife, that I had died for a prince who never deserved me. It clawed at me. But then I saw it. Not pity, not suspicion, understanding. He didn't know everything, but he knew enough. I won't ask who you were, he said quietly, and I won't ask who you are now. I blinked. Then what do you want from me? His answer was immediate. Truth, whatever version of it you're ready to give. The silence stretched between us like a rope pulled too tight. And then I let it go. I don't know how to be her, I said, and I don't know if I want to. Then be something else, he said. Just don't lie to yourself. There was no kiss, no dramatic music, just the quiet, terrifying honesty of two people standing on a cliff's edge, not sure if the next step was a fall or flight. And for the first time since waking in this body, I didn't feel completely alone. The secret archives of Blackthorn Palace weren't marked on any map. Luxen led me through a narrow, torchlit hallway, past a false panel hidden behind an antique tapestry of a phoenix rising from ash. Fitting. I was ash too. Inside, dust hung like a veil. The room smelled of old parchment and secrets never meant to be spoken aloud. Luxen didn't say a word as he lit a lamp and walked to a tall cabinet sealed with iron latches. He opened it with a key from around his neck and pulled out a weathered folder, bound in red string. He laid it on the table between us. "I want your eyes on this." I hesitated. "Why?" "Because something's wrong with it." My fingers grazed the string before untying it. The papers inside were brittle, yellowed, but the ink was crisp, too crisp. I scanned the first page. My name, Elira Davenhart, bold across the top. Accusation, espionage, treason, collusion with the Eastern rebels, status executed by royal command. A tremor passed through my spine. The report detailed mission logs, intercepted letters, coded transmissions. It read like a carefully scripted tragedy, all neatly documented, all damning, too clean. I swallowed. Where did this come from? "A courier from the capital," Luxen said, voice unreadable. "They thought I'd find it enlightening. Do you?" He leaned against the table, arms crossed. "No," I looked up sharply. "This story is perfect," he said. "Too perfect. No gaps, no contradictions, no missing pages. That's not how real betrayal reads." He pointed to a line mid-report. "Here, she supposedly confessed under no duress. Who confesses without being pushed?" I started, then stopped. "Whoever wrote this," he continued, "wanted her story buried, not questioned." I stared down at my own death. My breath caught. Luxen's voice softened. "Tell me what you see." He was testing me, and I knew why. He didn't think I was Seraphina. Not fully, maybe not at all. "I see," I began carefully, "a frame job. Someone powerful wanted her gone. But not just gone. Disgraced. A traitor's death is cleaner. It silences sympathy." He tilted his head. "And who would benefit most from that silence?" I met his gaze. The man who sat on the throne the next day, Kaien. He said nothing, but his silence confirmed everything. The truth itched to come out. I wanted to tell him I was her. I was the woman they erased. But the words stuck because I didn't know what he'd do with them. What if he turned me in? What if he believed the report? What if he used it against me later? Luxen walked to the fireplace, tossing a poker at the embers until they sparked. "You read like a soldier," he said. "Not a duchess." I stiffened. "You said you wouldn't ask." "I'm not. I'm observing." He turned back toward me. "Whoever you were before, you don't belong in that file. I know loyalty. I know liars. And something tells me she didn't betray anyone." I stared at the paper again. At my name written like an epitaph. "I didn't," I whispered. The words escaped before I could stop them. He said nothing, just watched me like a man waiting for a wave to break. "I don't care who you were," he said finally. "But if you want to burn the past down, I'll hand you the torch. Just don't lie to me when the flames reach your feet." I clenched the report tighter. "Why are you doing this?" "Because," Luxen said, walking to the door, "I've been lied to enough in this life to recognize when someone's desperate for truth, even if they're too afraid to say it." He left me alone in the room with my own ghost, and the proof that I had died, just like they wanted. The throne room was empty, long past midnight. Moonlight spilled through the stained glass windows, casting fractured colors across the cold marble floor. I stood near the dais, arms crossed, heart pounding. Luxen's footsteps echoed before I saw him. He looked furious, controlled but tight, like a storm barely held back by the seams of his jacket. "You went through my private reports," he said, voice sharp. "I didn't flinch. You left them unlocked. I trusted you." His words cracked through the space between us. I laughed once, dry, bitter. "You don't trust anyone." "You're right," he said, stepping closer. "And yet I did. For some foolish reason I believed what I saw when I looked in your eyes." "And what did you see?" I asked, voice rising. "A duchess? A wife? A convenient tool?" He stopped only a few paces away, eyes burning into mine. I saw someone who wasn't lying, until now. I bit down the confession clawing at my throat. I could have said it. I'm not Seraphina. I'm the girl your enemy killed. But I didn't. Instead I said, I'm not who you think I am. He scoffed. No, you're not. And I've let that slide. I've let you walk through these halls like a ghost wearing someone else's skin. My pulse surged. Because that's exactly what I am. He blinked. Just once. I turned from him, fury mixing with grief. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to wake up in her body, to live her life, to feel her feelings like they're mine. I can't tell where she ends and I begin anymore. I felt him behind me, close but not touching. Then softly, he said, Then tell me who you are. I turned slowly. The look on his face stopped my breath. Part pain, part disbelief, part hope twisted into something sharp. I don't know, I said. I knew once. But she died. He didn't speak. We stood in the silence between truths. Then he stepped forward, and he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was desperate, burning, a question and a challenge in one. And I kissed him back, not because I was Seraphina, but because I was Elira, and I was tired of pretending I didn't feel anything. The kiss deepened, broke, then found itself again, like two storms colliding and folding into one. And then, heat. Literal, scorching heat. Golden light exploded between us, rippling across my skin like fire made of ink. The soul mark blazed to life again, curling up my neck, across my collarbone, glowing hot enough to sear. Luxen stumbled back, eyes wide. What the hell? I gasped, clutching at the marks. My breath came in shallow bursts. He stared at me. That wasn't Seraphina's reaction. No, I managed. It wasn't. His eyes scanned me, afraid but fascinated. That wasn't her soul mark either. The truth balanced on the edge of my tongue, but I couldn't say it. Not yet. He took one step forward. Who are you? I opened my mouth and closed it, down the corridor, past the guards, barefoot, breathless, barely holding together. I didn't stop until I reached the night garden. The air was cold, dew settling on the grass like a second skin. I dropped to the stone bench near the fountain and pressed trembling hands to my face. What am I doing? I wanted revenge. I wanted justice. I didn't want this. Not feelings, not him. But the fire still lingered under my skin, pulsing with something too big, too ancient to name. The kiss was real, and so was I. But now Luxen knew enough to be dangerous, and Kaien was still watching. The temple at the edge of Blackthorn was a forgotten place, long stripped of priests, incense, and gods. Now it served only silence, and shadows, which made it the perfect place for betrayal. I stepped into the side chamber, lit by a single oil lamp. The walls were cracked marble. Ivy climbed through a broken window, the moonlight catching on the sharp edges of stone. Kaien was already there, waiting. He wore no crown tonight, no armor. Just a dark cloak pulled low, like he was trying to escape the weight of who he was. His eyes found mine immediately. You came, he said, as if surprised. As if he hadn't sent the message himself, delivered by a nervous servant who wouldn't meet my gaze. I want answers, I said, staying near the door. Make it quick. He studied me in the flickering light. You've changed. Timed as that, no. He took a step closer. You've changed in a way no one else sees, but I do. You carry yourself like her, he said. You glare like her, and you bleed like her. I'm not bleeding. You are, he whispered, on the inside. I turned away. If this is your twisted attempt at poetry, I'm not interested. My breath caught. He said the name like a spell, like he'd waited too long to use it. I faced him again, every inch of me tight with rage. So you figured it out, I suspected, after the soul mark flared, after I saw your eyes in hers. But tonight, I know. He took another step. You're Elira, my shadow, my sword, the girl I watched die. You didn't watch, I spat. You held the blade. His jaw tensed. I had no choice. There's always a choice. You just didn't choose me. He looked at me like I was both a ghost and a mirror. I thought killing you would silence the rumors, he said. I thought it would protect the crown. No, I said, stepping forward now. You killed me to protect yourself. He didn't deny it. I laughed, low and bitter. And now I'm back. Not for you. Not to haunt you. But to live a life you don't get to control. I don't want to control you, Elira. Then what do you want? He didn't answer. For the first time, he looked small, tired, lost. I never stopped regretting it, he said quietly. I see you when I close my eyes. Good. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist, gentle but firm. You could still come back. The real Seraphina is gone. We could... I yanked away. You don't get to offer me anything. Not love, not apologies, not a single damn chance. He flinched like I'd struck him. I trusted you, I said. I loved you, and you murdered me. The silence between us stretched. You're right, he said finally. You deserve more than what I gave you. But I was already walking toward the door, and I didn't see him slip into the shadows near the back of the temple. But I felt him. Luxen. I knew he had followed me. I knew he had heard. I paused outside the temple, waiting for him to catch up. He never did. Back at the palace, I found his rooms empty. The fire was cold, the bed untouched, the maps on his desk gone. He had vanished, like I had never existed. And maybe that was fair, because now he knew. I wasn't his duchess. I wasn't anyone's. The wind off the cliffs was sharp and cold, carrying the scent of salt and fire. I stood on the rocky shoreline behind the ruined temple, holding the wedding gown in both hands. The silk felt too light for how heavy it had once made me feel. Every thread had carried someone else's life, someone else's love, someone else's name. Seraphina. She had been real, soft, hopeful, maybe too trusting. She had loved a man who didn't know how to love her back until she was already gone. And I had borrowed her body, her voice, her memories, but I was done pretending. I knelt beside a small pile of dry wood and lit a match. The flame crackled to life, hungrily licking the edges of the fabric. The gown didn't scream as it burned. It simply dissolved, white turning to ash, gold embroidery curling in on itself. The fire flared once, then steadied. I didn't look away, not until the last thread vanished. Then I stood and walked back up the winding path toward the palace, wearing black. He found me where he always did, on the balcony, just before dawn. The world below us still slept, hushed in pre-sunlight gray. The sea shimmered far in the distance, waiting for light to break it open. I didn't turn as he stepped into the doorway, but I felt his presence steady as ever. I wondered if you'd come back, Luxen said. I did, I replied. Not for you, not for Kaien, for me. Silence. Then he walked forward until we stood shoulder to shoulder. I faced him. I'm not Seraphina, I said. My voice didn't shake this time. I never was. He looked at me, unreadable. I'm Elira, I said, the girl Kaien betrayed, the woman who woke up in a stranger's body. And for a while, I wanted revenge more than I wanted breath. A beat passed. But I burned her tonight, I whispered. Her gown, her name, not out of hate, but because she deserves to rest. And I deserve to rise. Luxen didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, You're not the woman I married. No, I said, I'm not. He stepped closer. But you're the woman I couldn't stop thinking about, the one who challenged me, who didn't flinch, who kissed me like she was drowning. I looked up at him, lips parting. You're not who I chose, he said softly, but you're who I don't want to lose. The wind caught between us, cold, honest. I reached for his hand, and he let me take it. No promise, just the truth, ours. As the first gold of morning spilled across the sky, I felt it. The marks on my skin pulsed once, then faded. Not burned, not vanished, but accepted. Like my soul had finally stopped fighting to be one or the other. I wasn't Elira of the blade. I was both, and neither. I was mine. And that was enough. We stood in silence, watching the sun rise over the edge of the world. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I felt free.